Do you sprinkle salt on your food as soon as you sit down to a meal? I know this is something that I used to do when I was younger. And the reason I did this was because my parents did it. We'd sit down at the dinner table, there'd be salt on the table, and you would sprinkle salt on your food before you ate it. Now, what I've learned over the years is that although salt is a great flavour enhancer, the best way to use it is to actually use it in the cooking process itself. So why is salt so widely misused in today's society? Personally, I think it comes down to a lack of education about how to use salt in the cooking process itself. And, these traditions that have been established for such a long time, where you go out to a restaurant, there's salt at the table, where you order a food and there's been salt added right at the last minute before it comes out to the table. Because we know that salt enhances flavour and people want to have this lovely dining experience where they experience those strong flavours. However, I know for me personally, when I go to a restaurant and food is overly salty, I actually don't really enjoy the meal. And I find that more and more often, places I go, food tends to be really salty. Now, the problem with adding salt at the end of the cooking process, just before you eat it, is that the salt doesn't get a chance to get absorbed into the food that you're eating. It's kind of like this big flavour hit, and the body can't absorb it as well. And this creates common health problems, such as high blood pressure, heart disease even, as well as kidney problems, and edema, which is fluid retention and creates swelling in the tissues in the body. Now, if you have any of these health conditions, then I would really, really recommend that you consider how you're using salt in your diet. And I would even ask you to consider the other forms of salt that you're using in things like processed foods. So you're consuming things like crackers, chips, biscuits, sauces, condiments. Look at the types of salt that are contained in those products and really think about whether you actually really need them. So to help you along, I would like to make some suggestions about how to use salt in the cooking process. So when you're cooking your food, it really comes down to the timing of the addition of salt, the quantity of that addition, and even the quality of the salt that you're using. So what I would suggest is that you look at the different types of salt first that you can use. So obviously we've got table salt, crystal salt, rock salt, and they're really common forms of salt. However, I would suggest that you perhaps get rid of those and actually start using sea salt in your diet, okay, and in your cooking. Now, there's lots of arguments for and against both of those. There's not really a great deal of difference, I guess, in the big picture. However, sea salt, generally contains still some of those trace elements and minerals that is contained in the sea itself. And, humans came from the sea, evolutionarily speaking, if that's how your understanding of evolution is. So we have this natural, alkalinity from the sea that we maintain through our blood system. Okay, so sea salt is my preferred choice over the table salt or the crystal salt. Also, there are other types of salt condiments that we can use. So things like miso paste, tamari, shoyu, different types of soy sauces, and even things like anchovies and shrimp paste and olives are great additions to meals to increase saltiness and build flavour. Okay, so I just want to share a few rules that I have for cooking and using salt in the cooking process. So the first one, and I'm going to start with meat. I'm not a big meat eater at all by any means, but I have learned over time that adding salt, putting some salt on your meat before you cook it is a great way to bring out the flavour. And that means you don't need to salt it at the end. And I see a lot of people adding salt to their steak or their sauce, their stews, and it's not the way to go. So add your salt to the meat before you cook it. Let it sit with that salt on it for a little while too. You can also, of course, marinate your meat, put it in some olive oil with the salt, with your herbs, with your garlic, whatever you like, and give it a good marinade before you then cook it. Things like grains, rice, porridge even, and even pasta add salt to the cooking water. Yeah, pinch is fine, you don't need heaps. Things like vegetables. So with vegetables, it depends on the cooking style. You know, we can cook veggies so many different ways. So of course we can boil, steam or blanch veggies, add salt to the cooking water. If you're going to bake your veggies, you know, toss them in some olive oil or other types of vegetable oil, pinch, you know, add some salt, toss that through and then put it in the oven. Same with any meat. If you're roasting meat, add your salt at the start before you put it in the oven. Then with salads, you know, if you're making a salad, if you're using raw vegetables, a great way to enhance the flavour is through a salad dressing. So we can, you know, mix again olive oil, some salt, some good quality vinegar, a little bit of sweetener, maybe honey or maple syrup, you know, make a nice dressing and put that on your salad. And that's going to add that, you know, all those different flavours that you want in your salad. We can also, you know, finely slice veggies and massage salt into them and create some quick pickles. Quick pickles are great as a condiment to a meal, as a little, you know, salt hit. You can add it to things. And so you can just salt your veggies. You can even press them a little bit with a weight and then just rinse them a little bit before you serve them up. And you only need small quantities of those added to a dish. And what else? So salt. Fruit. Okay, if you're cooking fruit, for instance, stewing some apples for an apple pie or an apple crumble, add a pinch of salt to the apples when they're cooking and that'll bring out that lovely sweetness. So adding salt actually will enhance the sweetness of things like fruit. So even on raw fruit, you know, if you're eating some watermelon or some strawberries, just the tiniest sprinkle of salt will help bring out some of that flavour of the sweetness too. And finally, I think if you're going to add salt to your food towards the end of the cooking process, then try and use some really good quality sea salt flakes, okay? They're just going to dissolve a lot better than the crystallized salt, and that's just going to leave a better flavour in your mouth, on your palate as well. All right, so they are my tips for using salt in the cooking process. I really wanted to share this with you because I think it's something that we need to educate ourselves about. I think we need to ditch the salt at the table. I think we need to ditch the really bad quality salt. It's like a chemical. It's not really a food. And the over excessive use of salt, especially in, you know, crackers, chips, biscuits and things, really isn't good for us. So have a look at where you're using salt. Try and think about using it in that cooking process like I described. And, you know, if you have any thoughts or comments, please share them below. I'd really love to hear what you're thinking about this. And if you would like to follow or subscribe, please do so and you will get notified when I post more content online. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.